All right, so picture this. You've got Singapore on your radar, maybe for work, maybe just because, you want to experience it.
Yeah.
But either way, you need a place to stay, and hotels just aren't really cutting it.
Right.
And that's where service departments come in, right?
Yeah. They're a really nice blend of like that homey comfort, but you also get some of those hotel perks, which
Yeah,
is great whether you're staying for, a couple of weeks or a couple of years.
exactly. And that's what we're diving deep on today.
Yes.
Navigating these service department leases in Singapore. We're talking lease terms, location, even, using amenities as bargaining chips.
Ooh, interesting stuff.
It is interesting stuff. It can get kind of complicated.
Yeah, what's really interesting is that a lot of expats who come to Singapore, they use these service departments as almost like a stepping stone.
Okay.
So they'll do like a short-term lease just to, get the lay of the land, and then they're better equipped to choose the right neighborhood when they're ready to, settle in for a longer stay.
Makes a lot of sense, right? Like a test drive before you commit. Yep. So let's get down to like the nuts and bolts here.
Sure.
What are like the essentials of a service department lease agreement in Singapore?
So the core of it's pretty standard. You've got your rental amount.
Right.
You've got your security deposit, and then the responsibilities for maintenance, who does what.
Okay. That sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are some nuances lurking beneath the surface.
Oh, you better. Like, for example, the security deposit, that's usually 1 or 2 months rent,
Okay.
but it's not necessarily set in stone.
Oh, really? So there's some wiggle room there.
There can be things like, the value of the apartment, your credit history, even how many other people want to rent in that area can all play a role.
So it's really not just a fixed number. It can really depend on the situation.
Exactly.
Now, what about those maintenance responsibilities? Who fixes? What if, let's say, the AC decides to take a tropical vacation?
Ah, the joys of tropical climates, right?
Exactly.
That's where clarity in that lease agreement is so important. It should explicitly state who's responsible for what repairs.
Okay.
Sometimes the landlord covers everything.
Okay.
Other times you might be responsible for smaller repairs.
Gotcha.
It's all about, being clear on that from the get-go.
So you've got your basic terms down, but let's talk flexibility. Because one of the big appeals of a service department is you're not necessarily locked into that year-long lease like you might be with a traditional rental.
Absolutely. That's a huge plus.
Yeah.
You've got options. You could do a few days, a few months, or even, a couple of years.
Wow, so really flexible.
Yeah, and those shorter leases, like say a week to 6 months, those are perfect for those temporary assignments, or if you're, like we said, just exploring before you commit.
Right.
And they often include furniture and utilities, which makes budgeting super easy.
Oh, that's nice. So it's all kind of bundled together.
Exactly.
So if you're, digital nomad or here on a project, that short term is looking pretty good.
Definitely.
What about the folks who are in it for the long haul, though?
For those settling in for a while, a lease of a year or more, that can often get you some nice discounts on the monthly rate.
Okay, so you can save some money.
Exactly. But here's the thing. You're usually responsible for furnishing the place and setting up utilities yourself.
Ah, so that's the trade-off, convenience versus cost savings.
Right. It's all about finding that balance
Right.
that works for you.
Finding that sweet spot where your needs and your budget and your lifestyle all come together.
Exactly.
Speaking of lifestyle, I have a feeling location plays a big role in all of this.
Oh, huge.
I mean, Singapore has got such diverse neighborhoods, each with its own vibe.
For sure, location is key.
Yeah.
Just like with any real estate, really.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine trying to snag a service department right in the central business district, surrounded by all those skyscrapers and nonstop energy.
Yeah.
You're going to pay a premium for that address.
Right. So if you want to be in the heart of it all,
You got it.
it's going to cost you.
It'll cost you.
Now, for someone who hasn't experienced the CBD, what would you say sets it apart from other parts of Singapore?
Well, it's the financial hub, so there's just this constant buzz and energy.
Okay.
You step out of your apartment and you're surrounded by, world-class restaurants, high-end shopping, all those iconic landmarks like Marina Bay Sands. It's an experience.
It's the place to be and be seen.
Yeah, for sure.
But what if our listener is craving something a little more laid back?
Right.
A little less concrete jungle.
Sure.
Are there areas that offer a different pace?
Absolutely. You could explore neighborhoods like River Valley or Bugis.
Okay.
They've got a much more chilled out atmosphere,
Yeah.
with charming cafes and unique shops, maybe even a bit more green space.
That sounds nice.
And you know what that means?
Lower rent? Tell me more.
Exactly. Those lease terms in areas like River Valley and Bugis, they're likely to be more affordable than in the CBD. It's all about what you prioritize. Do you want to be steps away from the financial district, or are you more drawn to that neighborhood with a more local feel?
It's like choosing your own adventure.
Exactly.
You get to decide what kind of Singapore experience you want.
That's the beauty of it.
Now let's talk about something that can really sweeten the deal,
Oh,
amenities.
yeah. Amenities are where it gets fun.
Right.
Service departments, they often have gyms, pools, sometimes even concierge services, the
The
works.
whole 9 yards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, while these perks definitely add, a touch of luxury and convenience,
Sure.
they also impact that rental cost.
So those swanky rooftop pools and state-of-the-art gyms, they come at a price.
They do.
But here's a thought. What if you're not a gym rat or a sunbather?
Right.
Can you use those amenities as leverage during negotiations?
You're thinking strategically. I like it.
Gotta be.
Yeah. While fancy amenities definitely tend to push those rents higher, they can absolutely be part of your negotiation strategy. If you're happy with a nearby public park instead of a private pool, you might be able to score a better deal on that lease.
So it's all about figuring out your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves and being willing to compromise on the latter.
Exactly.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and tackle the age-old question.
Okay,
Short-term versus long-term leases.
let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about lease terms, location amenities. It's a lot to think about.
It is. There's definitely a lot to consider.
For someone new to Singapore's rental scene, it can feel kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's imagine our listener is ready to take the plunge
Okay.
and find their Singapore home. What's like the first step they should take in this whole service department hunt?
I would say even before they start looking at listings,
Okay.
they need to get really, really clear on what their needs and priorities are.
Right.
So, what's their budget? How long are they planning on staying?
Okay.
And then what are their non-negotiables in terms of location size amenities?
It's like setting a course before you set sail.
Exactly. You got to know where you're going before you can figure out how to get there.
And that's where those property agents can come in handy.
Oh, for sure.
Right? They can kind of use their local knowledge to filter out the noise and match you with properties that fit what you're looking for.
Absolutely. A good agent is like your personal rental concierge.
Oh, I like that.
They know the market inside and out and can save you so much time and hassle.
Yeah, that's worth a lot.
It really is.
But let's say our listener is feeling adventurous and wants to tackle this search solo.
Okay, DIY style.
What resources are out there for them?
Well, online property portals are a great place to start.
Okay.
Websites that specialize in, Singapore rentals.
Right.
They have tons of listings, usually with photos, descriptions, even virtual tours. You can browse anytime, anywhere.
So it's like online shopping for your next home,
Exactly.
minus the delivery fees, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Are there other ways to kind of tap into that local knowledge without necessarily going through an agent?
Yeah, don't underestimate the power of the internet. Social media online communities can be gold mines.
Okay.
There are Facebook groups, forums specifically for expats, renters in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
You can connect with people who've been there, done that, and get their firsthand insights and recommendations.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, it's like having a virtual network of Singapore experts.
Okay, so our listeners done their research, maybe even lined up some viewings.
Okay.
Now they're standing in this potential apartment.
Mhm.
What are the red flags, the things that should make them maybe reconsider signing on the dotted line?
Well, first and foremost, they need to assess the condition of the apartment.
Okay.
Look for signs of wear and tear, water damage, mold, anything that just screams fixer-upper.
Right.
And don't just take the appliances at face value. Make sure they actually work.
Right. You got to test everything out.
Exactly. And don't be shy about asking questions.
Okay.
Ask about the building's security, how maintenance is handled, if there are any renovations planned that might turn your peaceful oasis into a construction zone.
So it's not just about the apartment itself, it's about the whole building and how it's managed.
Like the whole picture.
What about the surrounding area? What should our listener be looking for when they're exploring the neighborhood?
Yeah, take a walk around at different times of day.
Yeah.
Get a feel for the noise level, the traffic, the general vibe. Does it feel safe? Are there grocery stores, restaurants, public transportation within easy reach?
Right. It's like test driving the neighborhood.
Exactly. You wouldn't buy a car without taking it for a spin.
Right.
The same goes for where you're going to live.
Exactly. Okay, so let's say our listener has found that perfect service department that checks all the boxes. They're ready to seal the deal. What's the most important advice we can give them before they sign that lease agreement.
Read that lease agreement.
Okay.
And I mean, really read it, not just skim. Make
Yeah.
sure you understand every single clause, every fee, every detail.
Right. It's legally binding.
Exactly.
So it's not the time to be shy.
No, it's all about protecting yourself and making sure there are no surprises down the road.
Are there any specific clauses or terms that you find people often overlook, but which can really come back to bite them later?
Oh, yeah. Early termination clauses are a big one.
Okay.
Life is unpredictable. Sometimes plans change.
Right.
You need to understand what happens if you have to break your lease early. Are there penalties? How much notice do you need to give? It's all about having a clear exit strategy just in case.
So it's not just about getting in, it's about understanding how to get out
Exactly.
if you need to.
Yep.
What else should our listener be paying close attention to?
Another thing that often gets overlooked is that section on maintenance and repairs.
Okay.
Who's responsible for what happens if a pipe bursts or the AC goes on strike? You need to have those details ironed out up front to avoid headaches and disputes down the line.
Right. It's all about clarity and avoiding those gray areas.
Exactly.
Are there any other essential tips to make sure our listeners fully prepared to sign that lease?
Absolutely. Document everything. Take photos of the apartment's condition before you move in. Keep records of all communication with the landlord or agent. File any maintenance requests in writing.
Okay.
It creates a paper trail that can be super valuable if any disagreements come up.
So it's like building your own rental history file.
Yeah, exactly. You've got all the evidence you need if anything goes wrong.
Right. It's all about that transparency and accountability,
For sure.
which are essential for a smooth rental experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've walked our listener through the key steps of finding a service department, defining their needs, researching options, spotting those red flags, scrutinizing that lease agreement.
Yeah, it's a journey.
It is a journey,
But with the right approach, it can be an exciting one.
for sure. And remember, finding that right apartment is just the beginning of the adventure.
Exactly.
Once you're settled in, you get to explore all the amazing things Singapore has to offer.
That's the fun part.
Speaking of exploring, maybe in our next deep dive, we'll uncover the secrets to finding the best hawker centers
Oh, yeah.
and hidden culinary gems in Singapore.
I'm in.
I'm already hungry just thinking about it.
Me too.
Okay, so we've covered so much in this deep dive,
Yeah, we really have.
from lease terms and negotiation tactics to popular locations and all those legal considerations.
Right. It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot. But before we wrap up our exploration of service departments in Singapore, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Understanding your rights and responsibilities as a tenant.
That's so important.
It's super important.
Yeah, knowing your rights really empowers you to advocate for yourself and it just, make sure everything stays fair and transparent.
Right, so let's break it down for our listener.
Okay.
What are some key tenant rights in Singapore that they absolutely need to know?
Well, first and foremost, you have the right to a safe and habitable dwelling.
Okay.
So that means, the apartment should be in a reasonable state of repair, free from any major defects or safety hazards.
So we're talking no leaky roofs, faulty wiring, or surprise visits from unwanted critters.
Exactly. The apartment needs to be in a livable condition.
Right.
And if any issues come up, that affect the habitability, you have the right to request repairs from your landlord.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what happens if those repair requests are ignored?
Hmm.
What recourse does a tenant have in those situations?
Don't worry, Singapore has a really strong legal framework to protect tenant rights.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah, so if a landlord is neglecting their responsibility to address, legitimate repair requests,
Right.
tenants can file a complaint with the Housing and Development Board
Okay.
or the small claims tribunals.
So it's not just a matter of the landlord's word being final.
Right.
Tenants have ways to make sure their rights are upheld.
Absolutely. It's a partnership, and both parties have a role to play in making it work.
Speaking of roles and responsibilities,
Yes.
what are some key obligations that tenants need to keep in mind in Singapore?
Well, paying your rent on time is non-negotiable. Your lease agreement will clearly outline the payment schedule, and it's essential to stick to those terms.
Right. Rent is the cornerstone of any rental agreement.
Exactly.
What else should tenants be mindful of?
Keeping the apartment clean and in good condition is another big one.
Yeah.
Normal wear and tear is to be expected,
Sure.
but tenants are responsible for the general cleanliness and upkeep of the property.
So no turning the apartment into a concert venue without soundproofing and a cleanup crew on standby.
Let's just say it's best to treat the apartment with respect, as if it were your own.
Makes sense. Now, what about those situations where you might have guests over?
Okay.
I'm sure there are some, guidelines to keep in mind, especially in a service department setting.
Yeah, you're right. Being considerate of your neighbors is key.
Right.
Most service departments have rules about, noise levels, quiet hours, things like that.
Makes sense.
It's all about, being a good neighbor and fostering a peaceful living environment for everyone.
It's about that balance, right? Enjoying your space, but respecting the people around you.
Exactly.
Are there any, specific rules about having guests over that tenants should be aware of?
Yeah, some service departments might have restrictions on the number of guests you can have
Right.
or how long they can stay. It's always best to double check those details in your lease agreement just to avoid any misunderstandings.
Right. So if you're planning to host a week-long house party, it's probably wise to give your landlord a heads up.
Transparency is always the best policy.
I like that. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a little something to ponder.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
What's the final thought you want to leave them with?
Knowing everything we've discussed today,
Yeah.
what type of location and lease duration do you think would best suit your needs if you were moving to Singapore?
Mm-hmm.
Would the energy of the CBD be your calling?
Right.
Or perhaps the laid-back charm of River Valley?
Good question.
And would you opt for the flexibility of a short-term lease or the stability of a longer commitment?
It's all about envisioning your Singapore dream
Exactly.
and finding the service department that fits that vision.
And remember, this deep dive is just the starting point.
Right.
There's a whole world of resources out there,
So true.
from online portals and property agents to those vibrant expat communities in Singapore.
Yeah. Tons of resources.
So keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and keep an eye out for our future deep dives.
I like it.
Who knows, maybe we'll tackle the best Laksa spots in town next.
Ooh, now that's a deep dive. I'm definitely signing up for. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of service departments in Singapore.
My pleasure.
Happy apartment hunting, everyone.
Good luck.